get us kick-started, Dr. Satya, I'll probably get started with you. If you could talk a little bit about your journey at Laurus Labs and specifically talk about how you see the outsourcing work coming to you maybe 2 to 3 years back or maybe 4 or 5 years back versus the kind of work that is coming to you now in terms of the volumes of RFQs or the nature of work that is coming to you and how it has evolved. That will be interesting to hear.
First of all, what I observed, the obesity panel has 4 members. After that, the panel size started shrinking. And from 4, it went to 3, and it went to 2 now. So, that means we have to work very hard.
2 is mightier than 4.
We have to work very hard on this man. See, as a company, in the early days, we wanted to be a CDMO player. We had 350 scientists in R&D before we recruited first manufacturing person. But we had a lot of challenges. Nobody wanted to do business to us because we're very young, we're making losses, and we don't have FDA approved facility. So we were just about so deep in the waters. So we started looking at generics to survive. We had great success in generics, and at one point of time, 80% of revenue used to come from one product. Fortunately, we did cumulatively $1 billion sales from that product. And that gave us success, confidence that innovation only will bring any company to great successes. So we started putting a lot of energies, a lot of resources towards research. And even today, 20% of our colleagues works in R&D. We have close to 1,300 people in R&D, being a chemistry manufacturing driven company. But our conviction towards CDMO never died. We continue to put conviction. Until 2014, our revenue contribution from CDMO was less than $5 million. But we had a breakthrough with one partner in 2014. From 5 million, we went up to 25 million. But we were struggling at that number for a long time. Because people were not coming to us if we provide only cost saving as a solution. Cost saving was never a solution for CDMO players. I think for them, speed is important. Differentiated technologies are very important. Prem knows when we first purchased a continuous chromatography equipment, invested $7 million in 2014. The manufacturer couldn't believe why this company is placing an order. Is it a fake company or a real company? So that commercial guy came and visited us. Then only they accepted our order. Then we placed an order, the largest continuous chromatography equipment in Asia. So we took a lot of risks in our business to offer differentiated solutions. For big pharma like Novo, if cost is the only solution, why they will invest $20 billion in Denmark? They will buy semaglutide from India. That means cost is not the only solution for them to come. Will they save 10% of 2% and risk 98%? They don't. For them, they want to, for generics, a different story. Generics wanted to save 25% of 50%. That's significant. For big pharma, saving 10% of 1% and risk 99%, they will never take that chance. So for big pharma, the sourcing comes depending on technological capabilities, depending on the scale. Sometimes tax is also a major driver for them to where to source, not just the cost.
Yeah.
So which location is tax efficient for them, they will go there. But our conviction, we continue to invest. And we put so much of investment in the new technologies right now. We are offering a solution now. We're not offering our capacity. We invested so much in continuous chromatography, continuous manufacturing, continuous hydrogenation, biocatalysis, enzyme manufacturing. Because these days, the innovator chemistry is becoming very, very challenging. Nobody would like to do a run-of-the-mill small molecule. People are doing large small molecules now. So these GLP-1s, or many molecules are also becoming very challenging, chemistry-wise. So I think that's where we are in right now.
And Dr. Satya, if you compare, let's say 2-3 years back, when there's not so much conversations about Biosecure Act or other geopolitical elements, the kind of work coming to you then versus the kind of work coming to you now, both in terms of the volume and the nature of work, how would you characterize the two?
Definitely, there is a shift in customer perception. There are more visits, but we haven't seen the real benefit out of those visits yet. It will take some time. But the environment looks very interesting. If somebody wants to come to India from our neighboring country, they have to see the same infrastructure here.
Yeah.
They have to see the same scale here. But we don't have. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have that scale. I'll give one simple example. If you go to any industrial estate in China, you will see kilometers of steam pipelines across the industrial zone. For us to take a permission to take a steam pipeline from one of our unit to next unit, which is 30 meters away, it took 3 years for us. So if you want to compete, you should have the same skill sets. You should have the same infrastructure. You should have the same speed in delivering solutions. We Indian companies will never able to compete China in early stage work. We don't have that appetite. We don't have that expertise also. By the time you order raw materials, Chinese companies deliver product because we have to get raw material from China. So I think we have to coexist. So whether Biosecure Act is there or not, you can't survive without buying starting material from China, because Chinese pharmaceutical industry is an offshoot of billions of dollars, maybe $1 trillion investment into chemical industry. In India, we never invested in chemical industry. So we don't have a C1 plant. We don't have a methanol plant, which world scale. We still import methanol, which is one carbon molecule. And we say we want to compete globally. It's not possible. So we have to understand our limits. We have to play game where we have our strengths. If you want to play somebody's weakness, and we were not going to be leaders, that person can increase his strengths tomorrow, then you are dead. So we have to play against our strengths, not somebody else's weakness.
Maybe with that, I'll switch gears to Dr. Himanshu, to you. Maybe a little bit of your journey at NZ. I know it's been quite an exciting one. And then a similar question, if you look at 2-3 years back, the kind of queries that were coming to you and the kind of work profile that was coming to you versus now, how has that evolved?
Sure. So, unlike Dr. Satya, when I started with NZ, we are an Alchem Group company, so they're very strong in pharma generics. So we started out as a product development company with a focus on developing technologies. So in 2015, 2016 is when we actually started our R&D in Pune. There were already probably around 20 biosimilar players in India who had invested significantly for a significant amount of time. So when we were looking at the business proposition, just following what they were doing did not make sense. Because, when we start talking about cost of goods, everybody looks at direct cost, but it's really the big elephant is the manufacturing plant, right? I mean, if you have to invest $200-300 million and compete with folks, right? Like whether it is Intas, Zydus, others who've been doing it for many, many years, their plants are completely paid out, right? Depreciated. Then that business does not make any sense. So we had to look at things differently. And we said, okay, how can we still win in this marketplace? So there are two things that we looked at. One is to have a clutch of products that get launched at the same time, because you don't want your big manufacturing plant to sit idle. And the second play was to say, hey, we are not going to invest $200 million, right? Or $300 million. We want to invest less than, say, around $50 million and still be able to manage the volumetric output that would be required from the plant, right? And the only way to do that was to look at continuous manufacturing, because when you look at fed batch, 80% of the real estate or your footprint is occupied by all these whole tanks. So for us, it was about that, right? Can you develop a process where, you're continuously manufacturing the product so that all these hold tags are gone, and in a much smaller footprint, you can still manage to get the volumetric throughput that you need. What we realized along the way is that, people were talking about it in biologics, right? But connecting, because has to be a completely closed process. The same media that you feed for the cells is very rich, so microbes can easily grow in it, right? So for us, it was very challenging. And although everybody was talking about it, we realized that nobody had really done it from a end-to-end continuous process. So it was challenging. When we first did our tech transfer, we failed, and then we failed again. We failed 25 times. But after those 25 failures, we knew all the root causes of failures. And after that, we haven't really touched failed too much. But that allowed us to have a platform, a continuous manufacturing platform. So in 2018, 2019, the product development timelines are what they are. I mean, you have to go 5 times to interact with the government, and that can be very challenging, right? So, the products were slightly getting delayed. So we thought, okay, why can't we now, because 2019 is when our manufacturing plant came online. We were hoping to start launching all the products by 2020, but that was not, that didn't look feasible. So we said, okay, can we now start looking at CDMO? And actually, it was the continuous manufacturing which became the hook for us. So the first set of clients came to us because we had continuous manufacturing. So that is when we pivoted. And 2021, we launched a lot of products. So between 2021 to 2023, we did launch 7 products. And that way, our manufacturing plant was fully occupied. So one of the things is to occupy that plant. And unless you have experience, nobody's going to come and give you a CDMO project, right? And so the expenses were getting covered with the products. But clearly, continuous manufacturing was turning out to be that hook, for us. And one of the things that we realized is in the segment which we were playing in, and as Dr. Satya rightly said, look, you cannot compete with Samsung and Wushi's and the big CDMOs unless you are willing to invest $3 to $4 billion in your manufacturing plant, right? So you have to choose the field in which you want to play, right? And our addressable market was the early stage companies that were in phase 1, transitioning from preclinical to phase 1, right? And those companies are based mostly in the US, and they find it very challenging to outsource to India because it's a cultural difference, time zone difference, all kinds of gaps, right? Which is why we've set up something in the US which will go online early next year. And so, that's our CDMO play. To answer your Bio Secure Act, I think, look, CDMO is not an opportunistic business. So there may seem to be an opportunity right now with Biosecure, and, it will lead to some amount of interest in terms of deal funnel expansion, which we are seeing a little bit of. I think we have a lot more people approaching us on their own. But it's a long-term play, right? So this opportunity will go up and go down, but China is not going anywhere. I also agree with that sentiment because I think the infrastructure that they have installed there is incredible. And we should be realistic in terms of, our ability to compete with that. But I think there are these niche areas where we can play in, and definitely there is a business potential that may come because of Biosecure. But I see that as a short-term play. I think long-term, we just have to build a solid business in CDMO to succeed.
And Dr. Himanshu, if you look at, for example, the kind of criteria that your customers would have they evolved over time? And do they also vary by whether they are large pharmacos versus mid and small size pharmacos? What do you see there?
Yeah, so I think this is not the first time that companies have come to India in the biotech space. This happened in 2015, 2016 also. And look, we are not seen as Enzene Biosciences. We are seen as a Indian CDMO.
Yeah.
Right? So if we are not able to, fulfill what the requirements are of these folks, and I'll talk a little bit about what those requirements are, it really impacts the whole field, right? So it's very important to meet our clients who are based in US or Europe in terms of how they see the business. So things, it's the softer things, right? Project management, timely delivery, speed of delivery, communication. I think those are the things that we should really focus on to succeed in the space. Now, large company versus small company, as I was saying before, right? Like, for example, Amgen, they invest $1.5 billion in a plant, and they can actually get a realization of 8-9 billion from Enbrel, right? So now if they have to go to a CDMO, they are going to look for a CDMO as the same type of plant which Amgen has, right? Which is going to be a $2 billion plant. I mean, they're not going to come to us and say, hey, you manufactured this for us, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. So it has to be the smaller companies. I think, if you do things well, you can actually make it a sticky business where as their project moves forward, you can then go to phase 2, phase 3, and hopefully commercial. That's how you have to build it. I mean, if the aspirations are that Amgen or any of the big pharma comes and becomes a partner, then we have to be willing to invest $2-3 billion in it.
And we are looking forward to that. Maybe with that, Dr. Satya, I want to come back to you. You started off with the small molecule CDMO business, and now over the last maybe a decade, you've built the capabilities around large molecule as well. Of course, it's a younger offshoot of the two. But if you look at the two businesses in comparison, and you look at the recent kind of the work that is coming your way, how would you characterize the two, and how different or similar are they?
I think we don't do any large molecules. We wanted to build capabilities in enzymes.
Yeah.
We failed twice to build organically. And we decided that's not the way to do this business, because India pharmaceutical industry, unfortunately, is a chemist-driven business. It's not a biologist-driven business. Drug discovery and all is more biology, less chemistry. But we think the other way, unfortunately. So we decided to acquire talent, and that's where we acquired Richcore and renamed it as Laurus Bio. That was our entry into understanding large molecules. But they never produced any therapeutic proteins. They only restricted to non-therapeutic proteins. Even today, we do some proteins, but restricted to non-therapeutic proteins, food proteins, cosmetic proteins, and all. But we also produce enzymes for biocatalysis. But that was our first taste of success, growing inorganically in the space where we don't have expertise. Then we invested in cell therapy in a startup, IIT Bombay, which we don't have we have zero expertise in that. We wanted to help a startup, and we took some risk, and they did very well. They were the first ones to launch a CAR-T product in India, and they're also having another product in the pipeline. With that success, we wanted to see what can else be done in that space. So we took steps towards licensing and adenovirus technologies from IIT Kanpur, and we are building a GMP viral vector manufacturing facility, both to lentiviral and adenovirus, and also ability to do both immuno-oncology as well as gene therapy products there for a period of time. So with that success, we started looking at other areas. I think in the first oncology session, they were talking about the future of oncology will be more towards ADCs.
Yeah.
So we are also setting up a laboratory to do CDMO in ADCs.
Yeah.
Because we already make the two parts of that combination. We don't want to get into mAb manufacturing, but we want to do the combined conjugation we want to do in purification. Again, little selfish. We believe chemists are better purification experts than the biologists. So we wanted to do ADCs ourselves and then get there. So these are the new areas of moving away from small molecules to a kind of large small molecule space for us.
Dr. Satya, that also triggers another question for me. When we look at some of the CDMO players in India, oftentimes the dilemma or the debate that is happening is, should we invest in expanding our capacities and have large scale and so on, a little bit of that 2 billion facility that Dr. Himanshu, you were referring to, or invest in building some of these new capabilities? Because this is where the future is headed if you look at the pipelines of the innovators and so on and so forth. How do you think about this trade-off? Is it really a trade-off? You have to do both, you have to do one, and which way would you probably go yourself?
I think we learned it very hard way. In the last 3 years, we invested close to $350 million in infrastructure. At what cost we invested? So our debt went up from 100 million to 300 million. And our EBITDA came down from 200 million to 100 million. We're very much punished by the stock market because we are not showing profits. Our gross margins increasing, but nobody really cares about our gross margin, your quality of business. They want hard cash. What is our path?
Yeah.
So, but we took that hard path. But we believe the future is in technology, future is in scale. So we invested, we took a hard call. And I think in the 17, 18 years journey in the organization, this is the most exciting period in the company right now because we were delivering, or we have the ability to deliver from one end of the spectrum to the other end without compromising any technology gap. We can do biocatalysis, we can do enzymes, we can do fermentation, we can do continuous chromatography, we can do biocatalysis, we can do immuno-oncology, we can do gene therapy, we can do viral vectors. So we can offer a full spectrum of manufacturing services for our partners. That's we're very happy for that.
No.
And we also have world's largest continuous manufacturing capacities, both in APIs and also in formulations.
Yeah. Maybe Dr. Himanshu, you are coming from the other side of the technology spectrum. What's your view on this perennial debate that we keep hearing about?
Our goal also would be to become a modality agnostic CDMO, right? Perhaps also do small molecules at some point. But it's just like when you manage your own career, right? It's like a T. You first have to grow vertically and then you can start growing horizontally. I think we are at a stage right now where we really need to invest in growing vertically first. And vertically for us right now is monoclonal antibody manufacturing, right? And, with Prem and Aidrod's team, we keep on flirting with ideas of EDCs and viral vectors. I think definitely that has to be part of your play. I think the timing of it, like with Lotus Labs, Dr. Satya can now think about getting into all of these other things. For us, we have to get to that stage where, we are able to first establish ourselves as a very strong CDMO mAb manufacturing player. And then, we'll definitely branch out. I think there's no doubt that, some of these modalities, ADCs, viral vectors, cell therapies are definitely going to be the future, and future growth is going to come from them. So definitely we would also like to branch out at the right time into those modalities as well.
Yeah. Dr. Himanshu, if I go back to the little bit of the Indian industry that you had also started talking about from the large molecule perspective, more specifically, if you look at the Indian ecosystem, how mature do you think it is, or where is it in that journey? Of course, there's some way to go to be able to compete with China, as Dr. Satya was also saying. But where do you see we are on that maturity curve?
I think we've been doing traditional pharma for a lot longer than what we've been doing biotech. So we started doing antibiotics. So there's some fermentation technology maturity in that. But I think the biggest challenge for biopharma globally is, access to human capital. Now in the US that exists because there's so many innovator companies that are based there and you compete with them, right? In India, I feel we have the raw talent, right? But the way the education system has evolved, I think we are producing more generalists than specialists. So if you have people who are coming right off of their MTech 15 years back versus now, I think you don't have that specialization, right? So you have to invest a lot in, first of all, hiring the right talent, and then investing a lot in, kind of scaling them to what you need. So we hire from colleges, and I personally get involved in that. But we also, as a company, spend a lot of time in nurturing this talent. I think that is the biggest gap right now in terms of access to human capital. Even in India that exists. It exists everywhere. But in India, we are fortunate to have the numbers. But to succeed in this space, I think companies would have to invest a lot in nurturing this talent. It's not going to happen automatically. I mean, there is definitely a gap in terms of skill, there's not a gap in terms of will or numbers, but there's a gap in terms of skill that needs to be addressed.
What would be like one or two ideas for the country? It could be from a policy point of view, it could be from an infrastructure point of view, it could be from a talent point of view, as you were talking about. What would be your top couple of recommendations that we do differently?
I think it's a much larger scale problem to solve. I think the mushrooming of the education system is a big problem. I mean, we are not focusing like what we were in colleges. If you look at the syllabus, I think all parents want their kids to learn AI and also learn XYZ and then do chemical engineering, right? I mean, you're a chemical engineer, Anirudh. I mean, right? So how do you manage that expectation? I think what has happened is the IT sector has really spoiled our education system in terms of what the expectations are. And sorry if there are IT folks, I don't want to, it's not an insult, it's just the reality, right? And so, I think at government level, what policies you do? I mean, you have finishing schools that are sponsored, but somebody who's doing their MTech now, you tell their parents now your kid has to go to finishing school before he or she becomes employable, right? I mean, that's not the proposition. I think it is about industry companies trying to pitch in and saying, we want to develop this talent and so we want to invest in that. I think that investment is necessary. Investment in terms of money, investment in terms of resources, invest in terms of intention to say we want to build that workforce. And I think companies have to do that. We cannot outsource that problem to government. It's not going to work, in my opinion. I think companies have to start doing it themselves. Right. And if you know and realize that this is the major part to your success, you'll automatically do it.
Dr. Satya, your take on this?
My comments are going to be very harsh here. So
we would love that.
I think North is doing better in talent than South. In South, by birth, everybody is engineer and a doctor. So the guys who go to basic science is not a human being. That is the way South is. So for us, we have reduced our standards of recruiting a graduate in our manufacturing. Who can write a engineering is a chemist. As simple as that. Sometimes they don't write the double bonds in engineering also, but we still take them. Yeah, we still take them. That's the reality. That's the reality. So for us, I think we proudly say we produce 1.5 million chemists. I think chemists are not produced, they are trained. So we don't train. So Indian pharmaceutical industry will suffer significantly if we don't have enough talent. I think all the companies have to do. I was with the government ministry last week. They were saying, want to train 200. I said, you want to train 200? We recruit 400 every year. You want to train 200 in the state? I said, you have to put 3 zeros next to that. Yeah. So that is the way, if we think, then this industry will grow. See, if you look at the entire research people in pharmaceutical industry in India, is less than the scientist in Wuxi. How do you want to compete with them? You can't compete with them. They have 28,000 scientists. All our pharmaceutical industry is less than that scientist. By the time, we lose early stage projects to Chinese companies because by the time we give 16, 20 weeks lead time, they said your competitors are giving 1/4 of that. Because they have talent. We don't have talent. So for us to recruit 100 new scientists, we have to spend 3 months. Whereas China can deploy 100 scientists in a week. They may have, like your bench software engineers, they may have bench chemists. But we already have a lag of chemists to be recruited. Our R&D always struggles. Our budgeted approval is 1,000. We are always at 900. We don't have that talent pool here. I think all the leaders are here, some of the leaders. And unless they solve that problem, we suffer a lot. Absolutely. We will become very costly country to deliver service. But then people will like today, geopolitical, they're thinking ex-China. After 10 years, people will think ex-China, ex-India. I'm sure that will also come.
Yeah. But doctor, if you look at talent, of course, is a clear theme which is emerging. But if you look beyond talent, you look at the biotech parks that are coming up, or the material ecosystem that is developing, whether it is media, assays, whatever we are looking for, is that going in the right direction? Is the progress good enough?
If you want 100 acres of industrial land, can any state government give tomorrow? No. Answer is no. See, in India, real estate, industrial estates are real estates. People will buy land without having a business plan, and you hope to see that the land value goes up and sell.
Yeah.
But it's not the case in other countries. So if you go to China and ask for 500 acres, if they have, they will give. Otherwise, they reclaim sea and give you in 12 months. That's not the way here our infrastructure works. So I think we are doing good things. See, our priorities were different 10 years back. Our priorities are different today. Our priorities will be different after 10 years. See, with $250 billion GST collections, the government has to spend money. I think when their GST collection goes to $500 billion, that is 500 billion, I think they will spend more in infrastructure.
Yeah.
I think our priorities are changing. I'm very happy that we started investing in infrastructure. Things will change. But are we targeting 10% of companies involved in Biosecure Act, or we are targeting 10% of the 150 billion? That's the question.
Yeah.
We're only talking about 10% of 4 billion, we're talking 400 billion. Or we are talking 10% of 150 billion, we're talking 15 billion. I think,
True.
See, we have to shift our gears. I think we are driving on the slope. It's not that we have to drive uphill.
Yeah. Maybe with that, I would love to open up for the audience here. Yeah, I see one hand going up there in the corner. So I'm from the Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, and we have had the privilege of working with Immunoact to develop XCAR19. That happens to be one of, the sole drug molecules that has been brought to the market with interaction between academia as well as industry. There was a lot of hand-holding that was done by the US National Cancer Institute. My question to all the guys around here is, most of the drug development outside in the West is driven by industry-academia collaboration. You look at Novo Nordisk, they just announced the center with Oxford, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago. Novartis has its center in Basel. AstraZeneca again works with the CRUK Manchester cluster. My question is, where are our centers for academia and industry interaction in India that helps us develop this talent pool, gives industry access to Indian patients, gives them access to data? Unless, we have this sort of nurturing going around, I think we are just going to talk about manufacturing. The main problem is where to get the targets from. Unless you have a target, what do you manufacture? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Dr. Satya?
I think the Indian universities, the basic research is not being carried out. That is the biggest challenge right now. There are many reasons behind it. If you go to US and ask Asians, Chinese and Indians, if Chinese want to go back, I think they have no problem to go back. If you ask a scientist in a pharma industry in New Jersey, will you come to Thane and work? He said no. Well, if you go to David from Shanghai who is working in New Jersey, if you want to go to Shanghai, he will say yes. Because the lifestyle in Shanghai and New Jersey may be similar. He will have similar lifestyle, similar pay. But in India, it's not the case. So their lifestyle goes ups and down. If they move from New Jersey to Thane, their lifestyle goes ups and down. He will not come, or your family will not allow him to come. So that's talent pool coming back to their own country. We have yet to see that change. Then things will change. And second, the government investment into universities also have to go up. So we have universities of different standards and in infrastructure. IITs are the premium institutes. But if you go to other small universities, they are in a rented building. And they don't have chemistry labs. They don't have any laboratories. So I think things are changing. As I mentioned, things are changing. Maybe we will not have the same question being asked after 15 years. Maybe things could graduate where a lot of academia and industry collaborations will happen. Yeah, that's my call.
I just have an additional point on that. See, part of it is, of course, the will of industry to invest in a novel asset, right? And of course, Immuno Act is a great story. But the regulatory infrastructure for bringing a novel molecule all the way from preclinical to phase 3 and launch is just not there. So for an industry, anybody from industry to say, I want to take this asset, because look, we have the population in India where we don't have to look outside. It could be an India-only drug, but the regulatory infrastructure is not there. I mean, it'll just get lost into all of these, DCGI, RCGM rounds, and it'll take forever to bring a molecule to the market. I think that's the reality as well, in addition to the other things.
Satya, for very interesting and very provocative discussion, and Anirudh has been part of it, and we have been trying to drive the agenda to take India to the next level. If we look back 15 years back, India and China were at the same place in innovation, but China has made a tremendous progress in the last 15 years. If you have to prioritize one or two areas where all of us can focus going forward, what will be one or two areas, both from Himanshu's side and your side, Satya, where we can collectively work together to take the agenda forward?
I always say the difference how China grew and how India grew. They graduated from agrarian to manufacturing to services. So we moved from agrarian to services and coming back to manufacturing. We did masters before doing bachelors. So that's the problem. I think that today India is in place perfectly to take the boom in manufacturing. I think we should combine manufacturing and knowledge together to overcome what we lost in the last 2 decades. I think that's my... So we invest in manufacturing. Anybody who has money can manufacture, like Novo Nordisk investing $18 billion in Europe. They're not worried about the cost. Somebody is investing in India. For GE said they have the best technology center in Bangalore, because that is science. So you have to overlap science and manufacturing to gain the ground what we lost. I think that is the only we think best solution for India to overcome those.
Dr. Himanshu?
Yeah, I think we have to move up the value chain for biologics in particular, right? I mean, a lot of our technologies we still rely or import, right? Even the raw materials, whether it is cell culture media, whether it is the fermenters that we use, the HPLCs that we have. I mean, all of those we import. So for a moment, maybe we should not focus so much on China, but look at what we can do, irrespective of what China has done. And I think just moving up that value chain and being able to be a little bit more self-sufficient, or in terms of access to the ancillary things, right?
Yeah,
that will help. And especially, like COVID, we saw there was a big supply chain issue because we relied on the media to be imported from Singapore or from Europe. And I think that would be the next step in terms of biologics, to be able to do that locally here in India.
I guess both talent and ecosystem continue to remain the theme of focus. But Eddie, I see one hand going up there.
So I'm Swapnil Vanzari, founder of V&W Biotech. So my question is to Dr. Himanshu. As you are running a CDMO and there is a lot of multi-product facility, or there are multiple products you are running in the same facility, because the facility is a single-use facility, right? So this, what are the challenges to getting the material in time from? It's always depend on the imports, as you said, and there are several companies, Indian companies, who are trying to build an ecosystem here in India. So whether you're going to support it, and we are actually trying to create the small chunk of it. So what are the challenges, and whether the acceptance is there or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So the golden triangle is time, cost, and quality. We spoke so much about time and cost. We didn't speak about quality. I think that is the baseline, right? Because these are products that go into human beings. So there's no compromise on quality. So ultimately, I think for us to upscale also, I think our quality standards will have to match. Now, we have veterans here. So I'm not saying that the quality standards in India are poor, but I think they have to collectively just go up a few notches higher. And part of that problem also is, how to manage a multi-product facility, right? In terms of your cleaning, having the right quality procedures, demonstrating that you have the right cleaning procedures in place, and not just demonstrating to the regulators, but to yourself, right? Because, of course, like I said, we make those medicines. So I think quality itself becomes an area where, as a field, we should look at. And as a CDMO, you'll have to be a multi-product facility. Fortunately, we've moved away from the large stainless steel manufacturing plants to more single use. So it becomes easier to have product dedicated, at least material of contact in terms of single use, making sure your columns are not reused between products, etc. So there are ways in which with the newer technology, it's become easier to manage. It's not as difficult as it was when it was all stainless steel, where you had to have product dedicated suites. But the quality component of it becomes very important to manage.
I think one mantra that I hear almost consistently all best-in-class companies talk about is, think of this medicine being taken by your own father or your own mother.
Yeah, 100%.
And then what would you do or not do? And I think that's the litmus test. I see the hand going up there.
So we talked about biologics and immunotherapy. Now, particularly coming to CAR T cell therapy, which is so expenses are so prohibitive.
Yeah.
It goes into 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs. What can we do about it so that it can be affordable to a common man?
Any one of you want to start?
If you look at the therapy cost outside the country, it is $350,000 to $500,000 plus all other hospitalization cost. So it come maybe $700,000 to $1 million could be CAR T cost, overall cost. But in India, it is now 1/10 of that. See, again, if you want to bring it down, the number of treatment has to go up. I think the acceptance. Today, unlike other very system-driven treatment protocols, here doctor decides what treatment to be given. So if a doctor has a bone marrow center ideal, he will give bone marrow treatment rather than CAR T. So because his facility is ideal. Maybe they'll make more money on doing bone marrow than CAR T. So it all depends on the doctor's call rather than the systems-driven call. So I think still costs are going down. So I think TMH, somebody was there, TMH, they are doing a lot of treatments in less than that. So nobody is denied CAR T treatment right now. I think as the volume goes up, I'm sure the cost will come down, which can be affordable. Yeah.
Also, one more interesting thing with the newer therapies coming, whether it is CAR T or radiotherapy, is the manufacturing is going to change. I mean, we essentially are still in the industrial age of manufacturing, where we have big plants in one location and then manage supply chain. I think that has to go to a hub and spoke manufacturing, where the manufacturing is more localized. And we are participating in the US in one such kind of a grant where we are looking to manufacture in a van, right? Can you move that van closer to the hospital and just manufacture locally than having to manufacture in a centralized location? I think with the newer technologies, I think that's something that's going to become interesting as we move forward.
Yeah. Well, if there are no more questions, then we get to a wrap up. I know this was also the last session, but did not feel like one with all the questions coming in and all the lively discussion. Dr. Satya, Dr. Himanshu, thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and making this worthwhile for all of us.